Brought to you in association with Grendel Press. This is Werewolf the Podcast, a serial killer drama.
This is the final part of the Hitchhiker episodes. I hope you've really enjoyed it and you've enjoyed little Sally. It all comes to an end in this episode. What will happen? After breakfast, we went back to the suite and goofed around until checkout time. We paid the Karen, who was still at the desk miraculously, and we set off into a beautiful snowy day on a mission to kill some parents. Such happy times. We set off up the road to Sally's home, and the snow had been barreling down all night. The roads were clear of traffic as we made our way north to her little village and her little homestead. The journey started easily initially. Then as we got closer, she got more and more stressed. I could sense the change in her. The fear was building, and it maximised when we arrived at the village. The village reminded me of the mighty one in the mighty film, The Mighty Werewolf of London. It was a grim, grey day. We should have been somewhere in Yorkshire, not Scotland. I expected to drive around the corner and see the slaughtered lamb. In fact, I was kind of, hoping for it. Sadly, the dream never came true. It was some newly updated New Age pub with a cool vibe, and it probably served like Bakewell tart and tangerine cider. Such a letdown. I wanted it to be full of dour locals that would like to talk about, being aware of the moon and shit. These narratives never follow the arc that they really should. We continued through the village, and little Sally got tenser, is that, I don't know, as we got close to her home. Right, I said. Do you know what? We really need a plan.
Okay. What should we do? Surprisingly enough, I've never killed anyone before, so I might be a bit useless.
I am going to be Detective Sergeant Dickie Davis, and I'm returning you, the lost runaway, to the bosom of her heartbroken parents. When we get them inside, then we get them all in one room, and we can start all the other fun ideas that we're going to have. We can then play with things like light torture and gentle retribution. I only have one rule. You do what I say. I may ask you for some ideas, but do not do anything without me saying that it's cool. I'm really good at this shit, and we want to make it the least possible fun for them that we can. Is that okay?
Okay.
She replied.
But no harming wee Davy now, Finn.
I smiled over and agreed with a nod. She had annoyed me, though. She just told me my limits, which didn't bode well for her. Maybe I didn't want to be in this situation. Perhaps I was getting bored with it. But to be honest, I still was going to do what the fuck I wanted to. At the end of the day, Davy may or may not get through this process. Sally, I need a phone number. I need to give them the heads up that I'm coming with you. That is, what the police would do. So she read her phone number to the listening car's AI. I think I may have mentioned before that this car is, fucking awesome. A man answered the call and already had an attitude with the hello he gave. Sally shook in her seat, and I had to reach out and put my finger to her lips as she let tears spring into those beautiful, sparkling eyes. I mouthed reassurance, smiled, and told her, "It's going to be fine, Sally. It's going to be fine." "Hello, is this Mr. Dick's son?" I said. He surprisingly was a Scouser, which was a shock. Why would a Liverpudlian be in bonny Scotland? There again, why would he not? Oh, and for those that don't know, Scousers are from Liverpool. They are some of the nicest humans on the planet. So, why would you move from Liverpool to Scotland? It's a bit of a shock. But this one was a cunt. Now, that was a shock. Maybe he was kicked out of Liverpool for being a sun reader? This is Detective Sergeant Dickie Davis from Angus. I have a young lady who needs a bed for the night. Google Dickie Davis if you don't know him. It seemed appropriate. At the other end of the phone was a silence. That silence lasted a little too long for the next words to dribble from his gob. They definitely weren't sincere. He was lying. He was a great big huge pants on fire. Oh, thank God, that's amazing. Is she there with you? Can I speak to her? I turned to Sally, and she smiled, but shook her head with a severe no. I'm afraid not, Mr. Dixon. She is in the other car. I'm not with her at the moment. I'm about to meet her, and then I'll bring her to you guys, if that's okay. I would just like to bring her home myself. I hope that's fine. She's such a sweet wee lassie. I could just eat her up, Mr. Dixon. What am I saying? You must want to eat her up all the time. She must be fair frightened of being eaten out by you. I laughed. I know a pointless dig, but I thought he would not get my sarcastic comments anyway. I will have her home within the next couple of hours, sir. A lie, but I told him that and then hung up. Sally was sitting smiling at me.
Oh, Finn, thanks for doing this,
she said, and she almost made us crash as she jumped into my lap once more. The car swerved around. She told Giles, the AI, to play AC/DC Back in Black. We stopped at the local village pub and ordered expensive things off the menu. I drank llama's ear ale, while Sally had a donkey testicle stout. The pub was actually okay for one of those places that had been converted from a traditional British establishment into the plasticised version of the traditional British establishment. The conversation between us was bright as we discussed the manner of her mother and father's death. This little creature, so cute, was such a fucking psycho. Sally's brain was so dark and it was genuinely beguiling. We laughed and smiled together for what was probably the last time. Even Fen was enjoying himself as he saw that the deaths of these humans would be so creative. When we finished, it was time to go, and she was a little bit drunk. This would be fun. We arrived at her crappy little cottage on the outskirts of the village. It was a mess. A mess of a place. A garden of trash and weeds showed the slovenly disdain held by the family in general. A Morris minor sat rotting on the gravel. Seeing an actual Morris minor was amazing, even if it was a rotting piece of rust. With the car, there were 2 fridges and an old washing machine, all also leant against the outside wall. How could this beautiful little person in this car be linked to this shithole? As I pulled up in my vehicle, which was worth much more than the house, a local pack of feral children approached us on a mishmash of bikes. They circled the car and stopped to look at the posh prick's vehicle. "Hey, is that your fucking sister, Sally Ann?" said one of the mini snot monsters. "Hey, mister, what you doing there, Sally? Are you a pervert or something?" On our way out of the car, Sally took a little bit of an exception to this line of questioning.
Fuck off, Billy, or I'll tell your ma about the other Tuesday night, you fucking pervert.
This seemed to quieten the gang, who now stood as an audience as we walked up the path to the front door of the hovel. I knocked on the door and was met by bedlam as dogs sounded alarms. No one was heard in the house. The door was eventually shoved open by a bald, fat fucker. He was maybe in his early 40s and massively overweight, in grey-stained jogging bottoms and a once white t-shirt. At least, I think it used to be a white t-shirt. I think. Judging by his pungiosity, he'd not washed the shirt himself for a while. He was what we say as barkit, beyond unclean. He had a rollie behind his left ear and nicotine stains on his hands and teeth. This man had no right to exist on the same planet as my little Sally, and if he had touched her, well, death was the only outcome for him. This was not an objective opinion. This was the truth. He stood at the door, looking estate. He already leered over the new outfit Sally wore. Honestly, if you looked up stereotypes, you would see a picture of this person and pedo. Hey, did you get caught stealing those fucking clothes? He asked. Not a hello or how are you? He went straight into demeaning her. He was an utter shitbag. The halitosis was on an instant wretch creator. The smell of his breath was actually worse than the smell of the overriding air of dog shit. It made me feel like puking.
No!
She said, looking at the floor, her defensive body language in full swing. Then he addressed me. I can't afford to pay for what that little cow nicked, pal. He called me pal. He called me pal. He was fucking so fine. Jesus. It's fine, sir, I said. It's all taken care of, I told him. The horrible human was already assessing the value of the clothing second-hand on eBay or on the Facebook store. That would be his way of turning those clothes into alcohol and cigarettes. Oh, thanks, officer, he said, reaching for her to drag her in the door. She brushed his hand off and moved behind me, and he laughed at this. Hey, Sally's a little shy until she, gets to know you, if you know what I mean. Then she's not so shy. And then he winked. If you ken what I mean. Oh, I knew. And the wolf rattled the cage in my brain. Is it okay if I come in and have a chat with you, please, sir? I asked. Eh? Yeah. I'm afraid the house is a fucking mess, though. The wife doesn't look after it the way I want. The house was, well, as a werewolf and having my super senses, it was a mire of animal shit, animal fur, human mould, fluvium, and, etc. It was horrendous. I actually held my breath as I walked into the front room that had obviously not been upgraded since that time in the 70s when they moved in. The carpet was alive. I mean, you could actually watch this thing jump up and down live with fleas. It was also a crusty brown that it was definitely not supposed to be. He motioned to the chair that was, well, it was its own little environment. I remained standing and looked around in utter disgust. No wonder Sally wanted to get the fuck away from this place. It was deadly if you lived here. Your immune system must be absolutely on point to survive. The TV was another remnant from the past. Big, blocky, black and dull. There was a book for everyone, and old newspapers lay piled on the floor, and of course these were the Daily Mail and the Sun, which was weird for a Scouser. They usually hated the Sun. The walls were wood chip and nicotine yellow. Let me just say that it was super disgusting. I don't want you to think about it or go into any more detail. It was very disgusting. I was not going to eat this horrible person. If I did, I would die of food poisoning. It would take 2 showers in bleach to get rid of the smell of this place when I left. He threw a paper from the chair that was obviously his home thrown and let it land on the floor. He was enjoying the discomfort that he afforded this well-dressed man with his palpable poverty. Maggie! Hey, Maggie! He shouted. Your fucking daughter's home and healthy. A thin, washed-out, blonde white woman came from another room, which I assumed was the kitchen. Her eyes were so deep-set into her skull that she had a look of overwhelming harassment and anguish on her face, a welted and bruised face which was partially hidden by the angle of her head and fringe. My God, this was such a tropey cliché that if not true, you'd have thought that the narrator was laying it on thick. This was more than stereotypical, it was triotypical, at last, a new word to describe it. The woman burst into tears at the sight of her daughter, and Sally ran over and hugged her deeply. This was way too much drama. I could feel the hate waft off that wanker in the chair and smell the woman's desperation. The desperation in the thought that I might help them. Fen, my posit, sat by me looking at the scene, then looking at me, then looking at the scene. There's never a time that a posit is silent, but this had him quiet. He had no idea what to do. He was mind blown. His head turned to mine and he looked deep into my eyes. What the veritable fuck is going on here? Is this real or is this some kind of farce? He asked. Yes, I smiled at him. It confused me, but I had no idea at the time about what the fuck was going on. Sally turned to her mother and held a hand, then looked at me whilst holding that hand.
This is my family. Are the kids upstairs, Mum? Sally, we've been so worried about you. Are you in trouble?
The woman asked. The man laughed and pointed with his paper, disregarding the scene in front of him. Your mother's been in fucking bits, Sally, you selfish little bitch. Thank fuck that old Bill found you before anyone filthy did. He laughed, finishing his brief statement by wiggling his eyebrows at me, as though we shared some moments of whatever it was he was trying to communicate. Hey, you're lucky to be home where we can fucking look after you. You could have been at the once and once of some pervert or other, he said, half motioning his question to me. Luckily, you've come home to a safe place. Okay. I've heard enough from you parent people because, to be honest, you're fucking useless. You, Mr. Whatever you are called, are a kiddie fiddler who is worse than the worst scum of the earth. You are worse than the worst. The shite of the shit. He sat in his seat, gob open at these statements. His wife's face fell, her look of relief gone. He then smiled and grabbed his paper and opened it to look inside. Fucking prove it, he said dramatically. I presented Sally to him. I've heard it from the mouth of a witness who was also the victim. Of course she's saying that stuff. She's trying to hurt me because she doesn't like me being here with her mum. Her own mum will tell you she's been making this kind of shit up for years, since she was young. Nothing's ever been proved. Eh, Maggie? He turned to his wife, who gave no answer and looked down at the ground in her lack of response. He revelled. He raised his voice. Eh, Maggie? He looked at her and mumbled something under his breath. Ah, you see, the problem is that Mummy is a coward too, I told him. Sally looked affronted and Maggie's eyes met mine for the first time. Look at that sallow yellow face, a face of long-term pain. She's been letting you do this stuff to her kids because it makes her life easy. She has let you do this from fear. She is frightened of you. Fuck knows why, I told him. Pass me that fucking phone, Maggie. Let's phone this boy's masters and get him done for this dumb shit he keeps saying. Maggie did not move. Pass me the fucking phone. She just stood there. Her posture was that of the beaten dog, and she shook her head. What the fuck are you doing, Maggie? I'm protecting myself here. We will have words later, you fucking bitch. And he started to stand and tried to make his way to the phone. Sit down, I ordered, not angrily, not in a particularly threatening manner. I just displayed a great deal of sadness. Halfway out of his chair, he fell back into the seat in shock. Hey, I don't fucking care who you are, pal, he said. I really hate the term pal. It's not a sign of endearment. It's not a sign of friendship. It's a fucking threat. Well, I'm afraid the news is there's no one to phone. I am here as judge, jury, and executioner. With what this young lady has told me about you, let's refer to you, the accused, as the sick fuck. I am going to really hurt you. Then we'll probably kill you for what you've done. If you call me pal again, I will beat you like a ginger-haired stepchild in front of your wife. Pal, I told him. before I then kill you. I like the beating like a gingerhead stepchild line. I did steal it from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It always has that comedic quality threat. He really had no answer for this. He just sat gobsmacked, his manky-toothed maw open and stagnant in that moment. I could see him weighing up the possibility of winning this as a physical conflict, and I recognised that he realised that if I did what I said, he would be, I think the term is, technically, fucked. I sensed his next move before he made it. He was going to make a run for the door. He went for it. Leaping to his feet, he threw the remote control for the TV at me as he raised his carcass from the seat as fast as he could. He was so fat and slow, and I was already standing in front of him with a palm on his chest. I gently pushed him back down and crushed him with the back of my hand. The strike was slight, but telling. It told him not to fuck about. His lip was burst and bleeding, and as a result, he fell and shook in shock. By the time he'd regained the calm, I was back in the exact place I'd started, looking completely relaxed too. It was as though I'd never moved. Look, pal, you're fucked. You are completely at my mercy. I made a big deal of checking through my pockets while he watched, as though I'd lost something. He had no clue about what was going on. He just watched me check. I stopped my search and smiled in a very annoyed manner. I knew I was being pretty frightening. And guess what, pal? It looks like I don't have any on me. Mercy, that is. I will torture you and hurt you for the next couple of hours, maybe more. I'm gonna hurt you in ways that you can't imagine. Nothing sexual. Have you seen the nick of you? But I'm gonna break you into tiny pieces while you're alive, so you then beg these women for help. That help will be given. I will release you from the shite life that you suffer. You're gonna be dead. Proper dead. So let us begin, I said, interlacing my fingers and popping my knuckles, getting ready for the next bit of fun. I moved over to the chair that the man sat in. I took some time taking off my lovely blue pea coat, folded it carefully, and tried to find a clean surface on which I could place it. It was impossible. I'll just buy a new one when I could. I rotated my neck back and forth in a warm-up. I turned my back to the dead man in the seat. I was going to enjoy this. I hope he went for me. Fenrir, my posit, asked if he was needed, and at this point, I said no. You can just watch me work. I then turned, smiling, and to my shock, Maggie, his wife, was standing in front of the man's seat, wielding a knife. It was a crappy kitchen knife, and it had seen better days, but she held it in my direction with a serious look on her face.
Leave him alone.
I was incredulous. Wow.
He's a bastard, but he's my bastard, you see, and you won't be touching him if I can help it.
Sally was now crying and yelling at her to stop it. The woman wouldn't listen to Sally. Her tear-stained face was filled with pain, and the heartbreak was evident.
Mum!
Her mother would betray her for this thing. She would protect this kiddie fucking fucker. I smiled in acknowledgement of Sally's wishes and swung and smashed a fist into the side of her mother's skull. The woman's body went horizontal at the power of the shot, and she flew along the floor before she stopped in a mewling pile, surprisingly still alive against the wall.
No! Please! No, Fen!
Sally was angry and upset. But I thought, this is what she wanted, was it not? She then ran to her mother on the floor. What the fuck? I asked her. I did what you fucking asked. Fuck's sake, Sally, this woman's a cunt of the highest order. Why do you want to look after her?
She's my mum. I love her, and it's not her fault.
She sniffed. "Oh, fuck this," I said, kicking over a very dead potted plant and turning away from the mess on the floor. I ran my hands through my head and just couldn't believe what the fuck was going on. I just had to stand and think. I turned back to Sally. Fuming's not enough. I was raging. Still not enough. God, I was really, 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 really annoyed. Obviously, I need to do the best thing for you, I told her. I walked to the two women on the floor. I was still proper raging inside. Still not the right word for what I felt. Angry, but in control of the anger. I had no idea what the fuck was going on. "It's okay. I'll do it. That's it. Just step up. Let's just see if she's okay. That's it. Just back up a little bit. Let's just see if she's okay." I stamped on Mummy's head and then gave it another stomp. And I did it for Sally, so she would not be too upset that Mummy had a long and painful death. She died quickly. The mewling stopped from the woman after the second stamp, but I turned to see Sally on her knees, head in hands. She was now hysterical. There was no thanks from her. This is what she wanted. The rage left me for a moment. I wanted to take care of her. I cared a bit. I don't know what is going on. "So, why are you crying for this bitch? She let him. She let that bastard in that chair. She let him do things to you that... And she tried to defend him?" There was nothing coming from the girl. Sally lay on the floor in tears, holding her dead mother. Sobs wrapped her body as I moved to stand over her, lifting her from the bloody body. She tried to hold on to the woman. "Get up, Sally. Yeah, Sally, you wanted this. I tell you what, you can finish him yourself if you want. Yeah, okay? Imagine taking his life in the most painful way you can think of. You can take your revenge. This is what you wanted. I can show you how to make it last." I knelt down beside her and grabbed the discarded knife and placed it in her hands. "You can kill him. Look at him, sitting there in that seat. He thinks he's your lord and master. He thinks that he can do whatever he wants to you and your mum. Look at him now. Look how fucking pathetic he is. He is a loser. He did those things to you, and now you can clean this stain from the world. You can cut him slowly and make him suffer as the knife tracks through his flesh. You can take him to bits while he lives. You can remove his manhood and show it to him. Make him feel the things that he did." The man in the chair now started to vocalize his fears. He began to protest and cry out. "Hey, Sally, you know I love you. It was our special time. I treated you like my good girl and princess. You wouldn't kill your old man, would you?" He fucking warbled. Ignore him. He's not thinking about you. He's not thinking about your mum or your safety. Is he crying over your mum? He doesn't care about you in the fucking slightest. He doesn't care that she's dead. He's a rapist. He's a pedo. I grabbed Sally's head and forced her to look in that direction, forcing her to look at the man. "Sally, look at him. Look at that pathetic piece of shit sat there. Look at him. He was born a loser. He deserves death and pain. Don't be like your mum, please. Please, Don't be like your mother and protect this scum. He will only go on to hurt others as he has hurt you. If you need help, I will show you where and what to cut, what to do. We can hamstring him and then let him try to run from us. We can blind him so he can't see what is happening, but just feel what's happening. Come on, Sally. What do you say? What do you say? Do you want to kill him? You do. You do, don't you? You really want to kill him. The man in the chair was now breaking down, and small tears ran like smoke sliding from his features as he cried and protested. I looked at Sally with an expectation of her next move. I saw the brave, beautiful young woman going to cut the man a smile to hide his grief. Oh, I could not wait to see her brutalizing this pathetic thing. It would be a beautiful art, a beautiful piece of art for my soul. I stared at the man excitedly, imagining the violence she could cause him, listening to her joy and his misery. It would be. She would teach this thing, this beast, a lesson in so-called humanity, a lesson in pain. Her happiness would come. Her happiness at cutting him like a fucking ham joint, slowly removing his life while chastising him for his past actions. It never happened. She threw herself to the carpet once more, throwing the knife from her hand. The blade landed within the distance of the man in the chair, and I saw him get enough control over himself to ponder on whether to go and get it. In my mind, something broke. This is fucking mental. I had brought her here, allowing her to get her life back. I gave her the opportunity to enjoy the punishment of those that had hurt her in such a horrific way. The little ungrateful bitch. I don't know. I don't know. I had shown her some care and trust. I had shown her consideration. I had given her my time. And reflecting on it, I cared for her. Her response had been the usual. As all humans, in the end she'd failed me. She was human. Humans are pathetic. This would be my last try to show them the proper way to do things. Fuck it. She was now forgotten. Dead to me. I stood over the girl and wanted to crush her, to smash physically, grind her into the floor. But I couldn't. Something inside me, a feeling I couldn't recognise, stopped me. Fen at this point was so angry. Fucking kill it, came from Fen. Fucking kill it. There was a struggle in my head. I listened to them both fight in my brain over the girl. It built up in my head. I could not find an excuse not to kill her. Then I realised the worst thing that I could do for her is, now, to let her live. I will let her live so she can play this over and over in her head again and again. The time that she had this opportunity and didn't take it. Fen's voice sniggered in my head and went quiet. Yes, Will, that's actually much worse. We love the idea that she will live and always have to understand that this happened because of her. I was sorry for the outcome, but I thought I would be kind. I just let it go. Leaning over her, I lovingly rubbed that ginger hair. I crouched down and took the girl into my arms. I looked at her, drinking in the anguish, smiling into tear-filled eyes. I spoke. Goodbye, Sally. I really liked the fun we had. It was great. The shame of it is, You could have lived with me and been safe and secure, the most loved of my things. You would, think about it, you would have had a home with me and never needed for anything. But you're not made of the right stuff. You're weak. She burst deeper into hiccuping cries. The man in the chair didn't move. He could have got to the knife. I wish he'd tried. I really wanted to kill him. It would have given him a moment of hope that I could have ripped from him. He did nothing. A born coward. A pathetic man amongst pitiful men. I went over to him, bringing my head height to his. I put my hands on the armrests on either sides of the disgusting chair and stared into his little black life. I saw cowardice and avarice. This creature was truly broken and evil. He was a piece of living fecal matter. Should I destroy him? In some ways, he was truly beautiful. Was he too beautiful to destroy? My left hand gently reached for his throat and grasped it firmly. I would not let him die quickly by stopping the blood flow to his brain. I was going to stop the air from getting to his lungs by crushing his trachea. He would die slowly of suffocation. It would take a long and horrific amount of time for him to eventually die. I would let him almost fail. And then I would let him come back, and then go through the same process again and again until I got bored. I squeezed, then released, constantly taking him to the edge of his life, then let it come back to him. I looked into those horrific eyes. Through them, I felt all his horror, all his anguish as he fought. I felt him trying to fight his way back to life. He fought for every extra second he could. Finally bored, I squeezed hard and crushed. He panicked and grabbed my arm with both arms as I pushed him back in the chair. His life, as shit as it was, passed before his eyes and I shared it with him. As he started to weaken and relax, I let him sit back in his chair, which he obviously loved. I wanted to see him dead, so I kept my hand grasping his throat. Go, you pathetic scum. Death is too good for you, but I want you to die and know it was done because of what you did, because of how you lived. Karma is not a thing, but a nasty werewolf is. The man's hands fell, and his gasping and gurgling slowed as he finally failed. After another couple of minutes, he slumped forward and never took another breath. I lifted his head to mine to see empty eyes devoid of life, and using my strength, I tore that head from its shoulders. It felt wonderful. Sally, sadly, was still a crying heap. I passed her on the way to the kitchen and left the head next to hers on the ground. I washed as much blood off myself as I could at the sink. Once dried off on the nearest thing to a clean tea towel, I picked up my now dirty jacket. On the way out, I lifted the house phone and dialed 999, and with my best Taggart impression, I got to say, "There's been a murder." I then left the phone line open to the questioning operator. I left Sally there to deal with it. Her choice was strong or weak. She chose weak, and that, I'm afraid, doesn't interest me. She fucked it. We could have had more fun. It was done now, time to forget and move on. I did have a few more extra hours to drive because of this waste of time, but that brought a bright side. Have I told you how amazing this beautiful car is? Jeeves, I said to the AI, play Zeppelin. and wheels spinning, I pulled away from the little crowd to Kashmir. I often wonder what happened to little Sally. Only for a few seconds though, every now and again. Thanks for listening. There are loads of links down in the descriptors. Come and join the Facebook group. It's growing in numbers. You can follow me on Twitter if you want for more information. There's a book of the first 30 chapters or so as well there. And if you'd like to support the show, you could always buy me a coffee by going through the support the show link, because that's how you support the show, if you go through the support the show link. Anyway, cheers. Bye.
Brought to you in association with Grendel Press. This is Werewolf the Podcast, a serial killer drama.